Good morning. It's just after daylight and I'm out walking my prayer trail. Woke up at 3:30 this morning, felt God gave me something definitely for somebody. And it's one of those messages where you kind of feel like maybe there's somebody right now that needs this. I think everybody can glean something from it. What God gave me, if I can spit it out, that's always my concern, that I can get out what God gave me in my heart, the fire in my heart, that I can put that into words that are understandable. But I did have the feeling that maybe there was somebody that needed this. So I'm going to go for it. I've been reading in the book of John. Isn't John a wonderful book? Just a wonderful book, St. John. You know, it starts out talking about the deity of Christ and how he, in the beginning, was the Word, and that nothing was created without him. And, you know, Jesus didn't start at Bethlehem. That was his physical body. But it talks about the deity, and just it's incredible. It's an incredible chapter. And then we move on into, we get up to John 3's the story of Nicodemus, and you must be born again, and that wonderful John 3:8 that I love. The wind blows where it lists, you know, where it wants to, and you hear the sound thereof. You don't know where it's coming or where it's going. So is everyone that's born of the Spirit of God. And I talk often on that verse. You want to be led by the gentle breezes of the Holy Spirit. And then we get into John 4. He talks to the woman at the well. True worshipers worship the Father in spirit and truth. Just a powerful. That he's seeking such to worship him. Powerful passage. And then we move into 5 and 6 and 7. I am the good shepherd. You know, then going on through the book, my oh my, isn't John 14 a wonderful chapter? Starts out, let not your heart be troubled. And then, you know, he says, as he continues, 14, 15, 16, 17, there's the wonderful passage, in this world you're going to have tribulation, but I'm with you. I'm with you. Then in 15 specifically is the vine and the branches, the importance of staying in the vine. Then chapter 17, he prays for us and talks about the Father's will is that we know him, that it's about a relationship. Just a powerful book. And then, of course, too, in those chapters, I would encourage you to study the book of John if you're kind of having trouble where to read. You know, there's also then the story of him washing the disciples' feet, which the powerful servant leadership. And we'll talk about that in a later video. I think I've got a message cooking about that. It's just incredible what Jesus did there in the washing of the disciples' feet. But then, of course, the account of the crucifixion, and it's just a wonderful book. But in John chapter 18, and I like the NLT, the way it's translated in this particular passage, John 18:8 is a verse that God just really stirred me this morning. John 18:8. Where we are in John 18 is they're coming to arrest Jesus. And of course, Judas has betrayed the Lord. And isn't it something that even down to the last minute, seemed that Jesus was giving him opportunity and treated him so kindly and said friend, called him friend at one point. And, you know, it's just amazing to me how that he knew exactly what was going on, you know, but he just treated Judas like the rest of them. And, you know, a lot of people get hung up on, well, there's hypocrites among us. You know, Jesus gives everybody opportunity right down to the last minute. And that tragic ending of Judas, you know, he hung himself. He hung himself, but Jesus was giving him opportunity right down to the last minute. But in John chapter 18 is when they come, and Judas is leading the way, and they're coming to arrest Jesus. And there's a powerful verse here that just jumped out at me. When they came to arrest him, he said, verse 8 of John 18, I have it scribbled down on a piece of paper here and had it in my pocket. I've got it hanging here on a rusty nail on this tree. Since I am the one you want, let these others go. Now, his disciples are with him. You know, Peter tried to defend him. I could easily go off on that. There's a message in that. Drew his sword, you know, and I get all that. And Peter was zealous, but Jesus had some powerful lessons for Peter, who was quick and impulsive and quick to make a commitment and quick to say what he would do and draw his sword. He didn't mess around, but he also fell into the trap of the devil and denied the Lord later and wept bitterly, and then became a powerful apostle in the book of Acts. But Jesus, standing there as he's betrayed with a kiss, with a kiss, there's a lot in that. He said, since I am the one you want, let these others go. And then you jump down to verse 11 that says, shall I not drink the cup of suffering the Father has given me? Ooh, let me say it again. Since I am the one you want, let these others go. Let them go. Let everybody else go. Shall I not drink the cup of suffering the Father's given me? And that's verse 8, and then down to verse 11. And there's a message in this for us. I have written here, going to just pull this paper off of this nail and show it to you. I have written here, sometimes God will call us to go it alone. Sometimes God's will, God's plan for us, sometimes he'll call us to go it alone. Wow. Jesus was willing to go it alone. You take these. You take them. Since I'm the one you want, let these go. Shall I not drink of the cup of suffering that the Father's given me? Sometimes you got to go it alone. I've always loved Matthew 7:21. Not everyone that saith unto me, Lord, Lord, will enter into the kingdom of heaven, but he that does the will of the Father. I like the translation that says, not everyone that says, Lord, Lord, will enter in, but he that does what the Father actually wants. Remnant. Those of you, many of you, have told me, just had a young woman tell me by text this week. She's been watching the videos. She said, I want to be in the remnant. I want to be chosen. I want to step out. I want to step up. And we know that's what brings the choosing. It's not God playing favorites. It's when he sees us step up. I would encourage you to watch the last video because I talked about that a lot. When we step up, he says, yes, I'll take you. But he waits on us to see what our hunger is, like the woman at the well. He's seeking such to worship him. God's will isn't always easy. Remnant, we're moving into a time in our future in the incredible meltdown we're having in the United States. Man, I don't know where we're going here. I know ultimately what's going to happen. And I know we're headed for a 7-year tribulation hour. And I know that Jesus Christ is coming back. And I know this story has a happy ending. I've read the end of the book. Behold, I come quickly. Are the last words in the scripture. Behold, I come quickly. So the blessed hope of the Christian is powerful. But when you look at the circumstances around you, it can become very, very discouraging. The will of God isn't always easy. And sometimes you got to go it alone. Sometimes you got to go it alone. Oh, I want my family to be with me. You got to go it alone. Since I'm the one you want, let these others go. They weren't ready. They weren't ready. You listening? Shall I not drink of the cup of suffering that the Father's given me? Am I not to do the Father's will? He had settled that in Gethsemane. Not my will, thine be done. He sweat as it were great drops of blood. And we're moving into a difficult future, and this won't leave me. Sometimes you got to go it alone. Sometimes God's will call you that you got to go it alone. You say, oh man, you know, my wife isn't a Christian, so that's the answer. That pastor told me how to go alone. Man, I'm going to leave her, and I'm going to, you can go all kinds of directions with that thought. I'm talking about a spiritual commitment in our heart. I know of a couple a while back that I got acquainted with, and she said, I feel God's just calling me. God's just calling me, and my husband isn't quite on board, and he Well, you be faithful to him till death do you part, and you love him with all your heart, and you commit to pray like you've never prayed before, and you stick to it, and you be faithful. But sometimes in your heart, you got to go it alone. I'm going to take up my cross and follow Jesus. Maybe you're going to fuss about everything. Yeah, I've had I've had times in my life where God's will and the purpose and what we were to do, we've had to go it alone. Pam and I have had a couple of callings that people didn't understand, and I totally get it. And honestly, I'm not sure they were supposed to understand it at the time, but we've had some things God called us to do and directions He was going to take us that people were even upset at us about. We've been through that. God will test you to see, will you listen? Abraham, get thee out to a land that I will show thee. Get thee out to a land that I will show thee. He packed up all his camels and his stuff and took off. That looked irresponsible. Do you suppose he had relatives that said, where are you going? I don't know. Sometimes you got to go it alone. But I'm going to tell you something. There's nothing that compares with the joy of a personal, heartfelt commitment to say, Lord, I'm going to do your will. Shall I not drink the cup of suffering? Even though this isn't easy, I got to go it alone. Met with a woman a number of years ago that various people were suggesting we pray for her healing, and there's a time for that. I was healed of cancer 19 years ago. There's absolutely no question about it. But I just felt I was to talk to this woman. Boy, the church, and they meant well. They meant well, and I say that with sensitivity. We're going to go pray for her. Let's go, pastors, let's all go out there, and let's take a whole bunch of us in our shepherds group. We're going to go out. There's going to be 10, 12 of us. We're going to pray for this woman. And I kept feeling I needed to talk to her. So I went out and talked to her. Her name was Linda, and I went out to see her. There was also a Linda that with 3 children, but this was an older lady, and I went out to see her, and I knelt down beside her and I said, Linda, how do you feel about this? And she said, Tom, the Lord's going to take me. He's told me he's going to take me. And I'm totally at peace with it. I said, oh, I'm relieved, because I said, we want to pray in the Spirit. We want to be directed to God. And there's a time to pray when you're led for divine healing. And by His stripes, we are healed. But I also believe that when you're dealing with a Christian who talks with God, I stand back from that and say, how do you feel about this? And so we just prayed that God would take perfect care of her, and He ushered her into heaven. And since then, I've learned lots of things about her life and all she had been through, and it makes perfect sense to me that God said, it's enough. I'll pick the fruit at the peak of ripeness. You're ready. I'm going to take you. Sometimes you got to go it alone. Sometimes the other person doesn't see it. Sometimes well-meaning friends that love you, they don't get it. They don't see it. God has spoken to your heart. I've been there. I can talk about this with passion because I've had this quite a bit in my life. Pam and I have kind of been on the cutting edge of things. We've done new things, and I know that's frustrated a lot of people. I can understand that. I really can. But we've kind of been on the cutting edge, and God showed me one time that sometimes He's caused to do things just to give people permission. There's things that people thought should be done, but maybe they didn't have the courage or they didn't have the know-how, and they see somebody else, oh, I'll do that. I definitely believe that happened in our street ministry. When we started reaching out to the young, the underage prostitutes, and many of them had been abducted, we got reaching out to them to Chicago. There were people like, that is the craziest thing I've ever heard of in my life. A pastor in Chicago that was involved in a huge ministerial group told me that he was not aware, and he worked with Moody Bible Institute, so he was aware of Chicago. He said, I am not aware of a single ministry that's doing this. After we did it, and it was dangerous, after we did it, it was amazing the number of ministries that popped up to reach out to runaway kids, girls that had been abducted, and on it went. God's kind of used us over the years to do cutting edge things, to do new things. And I think sometimes it was to give permission. When we first opened a women's home, we didn't know of a women's home in Indiana. If there was one, we missed it. We searched and talked to people. We did not know of a women's home of that type, rehab centers. But I'm talking about character rehabilitation. We had Teen Challenge in Michigan, but The particular thing we were doing just for women, we didn't know of one. It was amazing after we did it for a couple of years, and we'd have people say, well, how's that work, and how's that set up? It was kind of like it gave people permission. Their heart was stirred, but they couldn't step out or wouldn't for whatever reason. I don't know those things. Okay, not tooting our horn. But I do think you need to come to grips and know what you're to do and what your role is. And I think as you get older, you come to peace with knowing what your assignment was. And I think that was one of our assignments. But the point is, many times we've had to go it alone. We've had to go it alone. When we moved to Chicago, that was a lonely trip. And even a lot of family didn't understand that and questioned, and I understand that. But looking back, I'm not critical of those people because I think I needed to go alone, but I needed Pam on board, and that was my confirmation. We had lived at the same place for 23 years. Women like security and being settled. She came to me and said, Tom, I believe God has spoken to me. We're to go to Chicago. Okay. Sometimes you got to go it alone. And as a couple, we had to go it alone, even when we had family that questioned all of that. Well, I don't want to drive too hard at the point, and sometimes it's good just to leave it lay and let the seed just set and germinate. But I believe this morning God spoke to me that this is for somebody. Sometimes God will call you to go it alone. I don't know what your fight is. Fight the good fight, Paul said. I don't know what your fight is. Our fights are different in different ways. But sometimes you got to go it alone. I've had people say to me, I'm the first Christian in my family. We're breaking generational sin here. I don't have a Christian heritage, Tom, like you do. I don't like so many. And I'm the only Christian at work. One man, one woman, and God are a majority. And there's grace available for every situation. He has promised that. Sometimes just in your purposing within your home to truly put God first, you got to go it alone. You got to go alone and just keep praying. Just keep praying for the family or for your spouse. But you got to go alone. I don't know what God's saying to your heart. I don't try to dictate those things. My responsibility is to share truth, to lovingly share truth, and not be intimidated by the pressures and the enemy and the principalities and powers, but to give truth. But Jesus said, since I am the one you want, let these others go. Shall I not drink of the cup of suffering? And sometimes God's will involves suffering and difficulty. Are you willing to go it alone? Not everyone that says unto me, Lord, Lord, will enter the kingdom of heaven, but he that does the will of the Father, what the Father actually wants. Powerful stuff. Think on it, please.